Welcome to the Healthy Investor Podcast with Bob Mastroianni, where you and I will learn from successful real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and other highly driven individuals about their journey and the healthy habits and routines that play an integral part of their growth. Before we jump into this podcast, I want to tell you a little bit about an event that's coming up this November and how you can be a part of it. Multifamily Mastery 5 in Orlando, Florida this November, sponsored by the Jake and Gino community. If you're a new investor looking to learn about multifamily investing, or if you're a seasoned investor looking to grow your multifamily business, this is the place to be. There's a lot of networking, education, and I just saw the speaker list and you will not be disappointed. Jam-packed with excellent speakers with experience in the multifamily industry. Multifamily Mastery 5, November 5th and 6th in Orlando, Florida. If you look at the show notes, I'll have a special link for Healthy Investor Podcast listeners only. Click on the link and enter code MASTERY2022 to get $200 off of your Multifamily Mastery 5 tickets. I'll be there in Orlando, and I hope to see you there too. Welcome back to the Healthy Investor Podcast. I'm your host, Bob Mastroianni. Today I have with me Trevor Thompson. Trevor is originally Canadian, moved to the United States. He originally came from the entertainment and attractions industry and moved into real estate investing. He has a lot of experience as a limited partner and also a general partner involved in some syndications and many deals. It looks like over 1,250 doors. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. Thanks so much for being here today, Trevor. Welcome.
No, my pleasure. I'm honored to be here. Very excited. And so I always say that I have the world's strangest journey.
Okay.
Started out, I worked for Ripley's, believe it or not, at age 13. And so in Niagara Falls, Canada. And then I did 5 years with them all through high school. Then I worked for Guinness World Records for 18 years. I managed an attraction in the Empire State Building, opened a new one in Los Angeles, California. Did a lot of very interesting things through that. Probably the coolest thing there was lunch with Michael Jackson, gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award for Guinness. So not too many people can say that.
Wow.
And then decided I wanted to open my own Guinness in Orlando, but it didn't happen. But I moved down there anyways, and of all things, opened a year-round haunted house attraction. Was not that successful, but I certainly learned a lot. And then got recruited by a company called iFly Indoor Skydiving. And I did 20 years with them. And I actually opened 46 of our 80 worldwide locations. And near the end, that got very exotic. So the first one on a Royal Caribbean cruise line, Queenstown, New Zealand, Brisbane, Australia, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Brasilia, Brazil, Calgary, Canada. So very kind of an eclectic entrepreneurial type background.
Wow. And we didn't even get into the real estate stuff yet. So
we
very cool.
haven't started that journey yet. So
very cool. I'm sure, through the road of Guinness, I'm sure you learned a lot. Met some interesting people and probably saw many interesting achievements, right?
I definitely have. And, it was I've led the most bizarre life. Met a lot of famous people. Some of the things you wouldn't even think of, like when I worked for iFly, Robert Downey Jr. right after Iron Man came to the tunnel and flew in the tunnel and hung out with us for a while. It was like just such a surreal life to be able to meet people. And then on his next movie, actually, a bunch of my friends did all the skydiving stunts that used to work for iFly or were customers of iFly. So just again, I've just been super blessed with a very unique life that has been very entrepreneurial, very, non-traditional.
Well, you've just created a new want for me. I've seen videos of people in the iFly, and I've seen there's actually, I guess I live right outside of Philadelphia, and I think there's one.
There's one King of Prussia Mall.
King of Prussia, yeah, exactly.
I was not probably a candidate for your healthy podcast there because I ate cheesesteaks twice a day. They were so good. I loved them. I love cheesesteaks, and for some reason they were so good. I ate them all the time. They were really good.
Well, so did I at one point in my life, you know. A little quick of my story is around 40 years old, I realized that my cholesterol was through the roof. Had some, you know, heart history in my background that wasn't all that great. So it was finally time to decide to turn it around. But I still throw in a cheesesteak every once in a while. It's sort of in my blood, I think, from
I think it, and once in a while is definitely the word, not every day and twice on the last day.
right. Sure, sure. So, what brought you over to investing in real estate? I mean, did you start investing in real estate while you were still actively working with iFly, or?
I did, yeah. So I always was interested in it. And oddly enough, at the very first team meeting with iFly, the original owner gave everybody a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
eye-opening. But unfortunately, I did what so many people do. I put it on the shelf and just continued my corporate journey, right? I was busy, I was working all these hours, just never really thought it was something I should do.
Mm,
And then we did get bought out by a private equity company. So it was the first time that I came into what I'm going to call a little bit of substantial money. So I said, well, there's no excuse now. Like I can keep working. I learned a little bit about passive investing, but I didn't quite know what it meant or where to learn it. Started my quest to find out where to do it, and learned a lot, obviously, in the last 5 years I've been doing it.
that was going to be my next question. What time frame was this? So this
Yeah,
is around
so about
2000.
5 years ago, I started passively investing. And to be honest, I loved my job. And so I was very satisfied. I always said, okay, when I decided to go full time, this is I've started to get passionate about real estate. But at the time, I was so passionate about iFly that I just couldn't see doing anything else. I mean, I loved it. And then, it was a little bit after we got bought out by private equity. It certainly wasn't the same company it used to be. So I started waning, but then I started opening the international locations, and that really put a new spark into my psyche. So I was okay with it. And then COVID came and they laid me off, and then they furloughed me and then they let me go, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
They were in a survival mode versus a growth and expansion mode. And so that's when I decided my choice was to do this real estate thing full time or go work for some 23-year-old with an MBA telling me what to do. And I'm a little bit stubborn to do that. And so it was a tough time to start, but I'm so glad I did.
Okay. So you had some money. You had the ability to participate in your first investment deal. What did that look like? Was that a multifamily?
Yes,
Was
it
it?
was a multi-family, deep value add. And to be honest, I didn't know that. I thought I was somewhat educated, and and it was actually through my first investment group that I was part of, and I invested in my first two deals. I actually made no money, so obviously not a really good start. But I learned a lot. I learned out why. I learned what to look for better. And since then, that things have been certainly a lot better. I keep looking at my bank account to see if my money showed up for my most successful investment to date. So more than 3x my money in 20 months.
Wow.
So that's a home run. So that
Yes.
more than makes up for a couple of singles and strikeouts. And it's the nice thing about real estate is it's normally very stable and successful. And I just had a couple that started off rough.
Okay, great. Well, so I'm looking at your list here of the opportunities that you've participated in, and it looks like I guess a majority of your opportunities you participate as a limited partner.
That's correct. Yeah, the majority. So right now I'm in 16, and with the ones selling, 14 of those are, sorry, 13 of those are still active. And mostly in multifamily. And in fact, I mean, literally the money's going to arrive and then go back out to the same person, say, of a new property. And that's a lot of things investors try to do, is if they can time it, give you your money back and then have a new deal so you can move some, if not all, of that money forward. And so most of my investments are in the multifamily space. That's the one I'm the most educated. But I also have a retail strip center, a medical center, an apartment to condo conversion, which is opposite. That's the opposite way they normally go. They
Yeah.
normally go from condos to apartments. And then my first storage build out in the North Carolina, in near the Charlotte area. And a lot of those I've done passively because I want to diversify my risk. I want to learn a little bit about the space, and I'd rather invest in experts in those spaces so that, it's not as risky as doing it on my active side.
Oh, great. So as a limited partner, this is a really interesting conversation for me because most of the people that I've interviewed so far are majority either general partners or even participating in joint venture opportunities or those sort of things. So as a limited partner, are you seeking out opportunities, or are you seeking out um, general partners who you're trying to follow? What is
Yeah,
your
so
strategy?
how I started out was, first of all, I started looking for people that it's my investment strategy is that I look at it like a racetrack. So the jockey, the person running the deal, is the person that you're investing in, right? So you're investing in the jockey. So you want to make sure. So I actually learned a little bit when I jumped into my first ones that I should have known a little bit more about the people I was investing in, and I should have studied them. I watch podcasts that they're on, and I do a lot more things now when I research someone. And then so I want to understand that they have similar values. How are they operating it? I want people that are trying to make the world a better place and make some money while they're doing it, right? So
Sure.
I'm very excited about people that say, okay, we're going to get a neighborhood, or apartment complex, we're going to fix it up, we're going to make it better, and we're going to do the following things. And then that's going, and then all the ones I invested in, they had back to school. I'm watching them all now because it's this time of year. I'm getting videos of back to school backpacks being given to all the kids going to school, because in the South, we're going back to school, and just little things like that, like just seeing that, there's a big guy, Rod Khalif, and he just
Yes.
posted 3,800 backpacks given out this school year.
Wow.
Isn't that, that's staggering, and they're filled with everything the children need to go back to school, right? And things like that inspire me and make me want it. So those are who I'm looking to invest in. So that's number one. And then number two is the horse. So it's the asset class, right? To me, the horse is. So what is it? And, and again, I've invested in a few different things because medical, when COVID happened, I thought I'm going to switch and try to get some medical investments, and especially these smaller medical centers outside of the big hospitals have really grown in popularity because it's not a big center. There's a lot more demand for it. So I did some passive investments in that, and just to try to learn different things. And on the active side, I'm only doing multifamily because it's what I know the most about. So I don't feel like I could do a proper job on a storage investment because I don't understand it enough to risk anyone other than my own money's in it.
Okay. Great. Great. Wow.
And
That's a
then
lot
the
of great
third thing is
information.
the
Yeah.
track, right?
Oh, yes.
So the track is very important to me. So most of my investments were in Texas for several reasons. I live in Texas. It's a pro business state and it's a pro landlord state, right? So those
Okay.
are all the things to look at. And then I switched over, and the investment that just made a lot of money was in Arizona. Same sort of parameters, right? Pro business state, pro landlord state. And then the Carolinas are also in similar, and I'd invest in Florida too, so I'm not investing up in the Northeast. People are, but it's not necessarily pro business, pro landlord. So that's very important to me. I've been, most of my investments have been there, even if others are attractive. I just sort of set, those are kind of my initial parameter rules.
Oh, well, so much to unpack there. I
Yeah,
think first is I love your analogy of you're betting on the jockey
yeah,
before you're betting on the horse. And I think oftentimes new investors come into the business, they find a deal, they think that they're trying to capital raise, they're trying to syndicate the opportunity, and they really want to shove numbers down your throat, right? And look at this return that we're going to get, and this is when you're going to get all of your money back. And I think the more I learn about this business and the more I'm meeting people in this business, it truly is about people,
yes,
and truly is about making a difference. And I love that you spoke about creating value in these developments,
yeah,
creating value for people, like the backpacks for school thing. That's a really cool thing. And I think the more we can sort of spread that message of, yes, your investors do care about, you're a steward
yeah,
of your investors' money, right? So they do care about the numbers, they do, but they care about you also. Who is the jockey? So
yeah.
that's So while we go down that path a little bit, one of the things that I've had several different conversations about, does it make sense to syndicate versus joint venture? Um, are you looking, when you're looking for your syndication opportunities, are you looking for things that are, say, a set parameter, set amount of time, then get your money all back, and then you're out of the deal? Or have you been involved in syndications where they're looking to sort of hang on longer? What is your
Yeah.
preference there?
Yeah, so it's changed quite a bit, and it changed too based on, because you can remember every investment has sort of different parameters of what it does, right? So my initial investments are what I'm going to refer to deep value add. So you buy an underperforming asset, apartment complex, you put in a lot of money into it, you put a lot of systems and management into it, and then you get out before anything breaks. That's the way I look at it. That's the shortest version, right? And
Sure.
so it's the maximum return on your effort and dollars, right? So you go in there, you do lots of things, big heavy lift, turn it around, and then you try to sell it. You've reached this maximum tipping point, and you sell it kind of the I'm going to call it the safe bet, right? To
Mm.
get out before you need more capex, before anything happens. Often they're older assets, so time is your enemy on some of those to buy and hold. And then I got a little bit burned on a couple of them at the beginning. So I actually switched, and my next one was a 7-year hold. And it was a new A-class property, and they bought it from a developer. It was 80% rented up. So there you're finishing filling it, you're burning off concessions. So when you have a new apartment complex, anytime there's a new building, right? It's the first month free, whatever it is, right? They
Sure.
try to fill it out. They don't worry a lot about add-ons like parking, preferred parking garages, pet, they do pet feed, they do sort of the standard, but they don't, I'm going to call milk it all out, right? Valet
Sure.
trash and all of those things. They're just building it, trying to, and again, they're reaching this tipping point. So after I did that first investment, now I'm in another one, which is a new build. And it's quite opposite, right? You put your money in, you get nothing until they reach this tipping point, and then they sell it. And so that's quite speculative too. And then right now, just because kind of the world is a little bit, I've been looking for what I'm going to call a C plus asset in a B neighborhood. And
Okay.
people know enough, and that's what everybody's looking for, mind you.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, the sweet spot right now for what I'm looking at. And then I've been looking at what I'm going to call the 48 to 100 doors, but trying to stay focused in the 70s. 80s number of doors, just so you got enough of a size for some management on site. And the idea of it is all the big syndicator groups are telling you 100 and above, and all the joint venture guys are looking 48 and below, because you're not raising money. So everybody's got to
Sure.
have enough money, right? So if you've got 5 guys and they've got 100,000 each, they're buying a 24 unit. They're
Yep.
not buying a 75 unit.
Sure.
And so I tried to find that little sweet spot in the marketplace, and it's been successful. A couple of deals that are in that, what I'm going to call that mid-size range, and it's just it's a niche of the market, right?
Well, that's interesting. So you're speaking a lot in the 50 to sort of 80, 90
Yeah.
unit range. That's
Yeah,
an
because
interesting
again, all the
range.
big syndicators tell you 100 and above. That's all they talk about. And then
Sure.
the joint venture guys talk about, because clearly you got to have enough cash to buy. If you're not raising money, you've got to have all the money for the down payment, the capex, everything that's involved. And if you do a true joint venture, which a lot of people don't, a lot of people do quasi joint venture. Joint venture means everybody puts in money and everybody has a role. So if
Sure.
you're taking investor money in it, which some are, I'm not the police, but some are, and I don't want to be there. I don't look good in orange, and I don't ever want to be in orange. And so, but I still very interested in it. I would love to find something close to where I live that was a buy and hold, and basically buy it, stabilize it, refi it, and have infinite returns. But you want to get infinite returns on something that's stable and less maintenance, right? So you want a nice solid B class property in a decent neighborhood, because eventually you're gonna have to start eating out of cash flow to fix things. That's what happens when you get into that space.
Sure. And just to sort of circle back a little bit, you spoke about these new builds and some of these newer properties, and you mentioned that they weren't necessarily adding as many little expenses
Yeah.
or those things. Is that intentionally to leave some meat on the bone for the next investor,
It
or
definitely is part of it, and it's definitely, the whole world is least resistance to the greatest reward,
okay,
right?
yeah,
So the least resistance to the greatest reward is we're going to get $1,200 rent.
yeah,
Okay, that's where we want to get. And so we want to be able to tell you out of 300 units, we have 250 rented at $1,200. That's just to say the math. And
sure,
you're not as interested in all the rest of the stuff, right? Because that's the big nut. That's the thing that kind of pays it all off, and it's the thing that's get the most. And it's harder to do all the little upsells when it's new and you're
hmm,
just trying to get it. You're trying to rent 100 apartments in a 2 month period. It's a different game. And it doesn't mean that they don't do it. It doesn't mean it's just this particular property that was their MO, right? They would build it, sell it, and leave that meat on the bone for the next buyer, right? So they had another year kind of to stabilize it out. Then as they started signing new leases, they were burning off concessions and adding features.
yeah. So in my day job, I don't talk about this much, I guess, on the podcast, but in my day job, I'm in sales and I work for a company that sells cloud-based access management. So,
Okay.
anywhere that you can unlock doors, we have a condo, an apartment package, and one of the conversations that we've had several times is that in these new builds and this new construction, they really don't want the monthly bill, right?
Yeah.
So they'd rather pay up front for a couple years in advance of, because this is a subscription based service, right? They'd rather pay a couple months in advance, so that isn't that isn't shown as an expense, right? It's
Yeah.
then shown as an expense on the property,
Yeah.
because the plan is we're going to sell it in a couple years and let the next person deal with the
Yeah.
monthly expenditure of that, right? So
Yeah. And in fact, when this one investment, I volunteered to help, and I actually researched 10 different smart apartment companies, sent my 3 finalists and got bids. They ended up finding a fourth finalist. Jury's still out whether they picked the right or the wrong route. They picked the self-installation route, and I warned them about that. Yeah, I can see from your face that because again, they could go at their own pace. They weren't signing up, and so be interesting to see how that pans out for them. But again, I was looking for the path of least resistance to the greatest result.
yeah,
And it was just hard for them to throw out 300 brand new door locks, door handles, and thermostats, and I don't blame them.
yeah.
They just bought those, and now I'm telling them to throw them in the garbage.
Yeah, and another thing, just because of my knowledge of this business and my knowledge of that side of the business, new door locks, especially when you're talking apartment complex and apartment grade, you may be potentially looking at 24 to 36 months before they can even be delivered,
Yeah.
and then the price is pretty significant. I think most people think of, well, I go to Home Depot and I grab a $50 door
Yeah.
lock and I switch it, and that is not what you're doing in an apartment complex, an apartment building, and you're doing it
No, and
times, like you
especially
said,
in Texas, to
300.
get that extra deadbolt in Texas,
Yeah.
and luckily it all fit into the piece, so that we've got lucky,
Hmm.
because that could add quite an extensive extra cost.
Well, great, great. So there's so many directions I could go
And
here, but I want to be mindful of your time also, and respectful of your time. So this is the Healthy Investor Podcast, and I really like to try and deep dive and learn a little bit about some routines or habits or things that have helped you to grow, and then also, how they helped you to grow in your business.
yeah, so unfortunately, right now I'm not as healthy as I should be. I've been struggling with the health issue, but clearly working out, keeping your body and your mind fresh is super important. Keeping your energy up, it's very important. Um, I'm on a seating desk now, but I hope to get back to a standing desk. I did
Okay.
a standing desk, and I was trying to do 10 to 15,000 steps a day. Maybe that's how I wore my hip out, that I need a new one now, so I'm not doing that. But
Oh,
yeah, so but it's but definitely, having some sort of routine. And I traveled a lot, and it's very challenging to maintain not only the exercise routine, but we talked about it earlier, right? The two cheesesteaks in one day, because
sure.
you get tired and you go for that comfort food, which is never the healthy food. And so I actually always have healthy snacks in my backpack, and I have peanuts in my car, and certain things that just to avoid that temptation to stop at a burger joint, or
Yeah.
an unhealthy thing. And then when I stayed at any location more than like 3 days, I always tried to have a kitchen, so that at least I could cook something healthier in the morning and have an option to not eat all of lunch and bring it back home.
Yeah.
So the combination of the two. But I told somebody today, actually, it's sort of a joke. If I kept all the weight off I lost, I wouldn't be here, because I've gained and lost it so many times. But it's definitely, but health of the mind is just as much too. If you're going to be in this entrepreneurial grind, I mean, it was my record was 256 days on the road, and that's a grind, and easy to
Yeah.
get tired. So you got to really keep your energy, enthusiasm up, because it's just so vital.
So what sort of things are you doing to help with the mindset and the health of your mind?
Yeah, so I'm an avid learner. So I just
Okay.
spend a lot, like I try to get fascinated by finding something new. I'm big into Audible, so I travel around and go look at properties, and I go to meetups. And so I hit a peak of 100 Audible books a year, and that
Wow.
includes forcing myself to re-listen if I knew I wasn't paying attention, forcing myself to finish a book that somebody else, or an audio that somebody else recommended that I hated, because I would think they loved it. It was enough for them to recommend it to me. So there has to be tidbits of information that I'm going to get some value out of. So kind of things like that, and just trying to take that opportunity to keep my mind always going.
Well, that's great. That's a very interesting goal. 100 Audible books a year. I can tell you, I read every morning, and I'm often reading books about finance or personal development, personal growth, and I have the Audible subscription, which gives you one free book per month. And there are times when I'll look on my Audible and it'll say like, "Hey, you still have two
Yeah.
credits left." So I'm not sure that I do more than 10 to 12
Yeah.
Audible books a
But
year.
again, it's my lifestyle, right? So I'm going to meetups in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas. So, Dallas and Houston are 3 hour trips. So I've got 6 hours. So, and I don't
Wow.
like to talk on the car and the phone. I get some hearing loss and things. So I don't, so I really don't, so I just listen to Audible books, and, and I just listen to them, and I try to focus on them, and, I forced myself to re-listen to a chapter if I completely zoned out and thought about something else. Just and again, of course, sometimes it's a real struggle. Like somebody recommended a book, and it was like, to be honest, I finished it in like 6.5 hours of my life I'll never get back. That was all I could say about the book. But they were so passionate about recommending it. I thought, and don't get me wrong, there were nuggets in it. It just didn't fit what I needed to hear, what I was, my thought process.
Yeah. Well, I find interesting, talking about Audible. I feel like the idea of an Audible book where the author is reading it, that's a very interesting concept to me, because I think there are some people, I just finished Ed Milet's The Power of One More. And Ed is really passionate about his message, and he's telling his own story. And it makes so much sense to me that he reads it back to you
And
in
it
his
was an
words and his
awesome book.
voice.
I read it. I listened to it too. It was an awesome book, you
Yeah.
know. And
And
it's
then,
so true. Just one more is like, to be honest, it really spoke to me, because I like to push and get that little extra thing, right? And
mhm.
somebody recommended it and I never heard of it. And I often try to listen to people's recommendations, because I just want that. And so many times I've been pleasantly surprised. And that was one of them, just, because I thought, well, what can that be about? And just that little extra push to get to the next level is often, and we all know it in the back of our mind that that's the way to get to the next level. But
Yeah. So one other thing that I notice, we're connected on social media, and I know that you participate in a lot of meetups, a lot of networking
Yeah.
events. I think it's awesome. It's our paths crossed a few different times in different networking events, and it just made absolute sense for us to meet up
Yeah.
on something like this. But how many events do you think you're doing per week at this point?
So I'm obsessive personality, in case you didn't pick that up already. And so one of the things I like to do at the end of the year is I like to think of things like sort of a hairy, audacious goal, and I kind of change them sometimes. I did a switch just a couple of weeks ago on it, but spoiler alert, it'd be one of my book recommendations. But Grant Cardone talking about being omnipresent, and if
Okay.
they haven't heard about you, and so I set a mission for this year to be like, everybody heard of me. I'm everywhere. And I actually have a sign up there that says, work so hard that you no longer have to introduce yourself. And so I set that mantra up for this year, and I've been obsessive with like driving long distances to meetups, flying long distances to meet up. I'm not going to duplicate it again next year because it's unsustainable and it's been distracting for some other things I need to get done. But I'm going to finish out strong and keep on it. One of my goals was 52 podcasts, to be on somebody else's podcast.
Okay.
I want to start my own because I don't want to edit it. And I don't want to have to find guests, but I love talking and I love telling my story, and I'm fairly diverse on, I can talk about a lot of different things and I just enjoy it. So I decided it was a way for me to connect with people.
Great. Great. So I'd like to, I have a feeling that you and I will probably see each other at a networking event
I hope
soon
so.
in person. We've been on a few Zooms. I think Yona Weiss we've been on a
Yeah.
couple of Yona's Zooms. I think,
And I've done Jonas Challenge too. I bombed out. So the first one I started and then I lasted like 3 days and quit. The second one I did 1 week, and then my second one I was flawless every day. And then my third one, and it's a social media challenge, and
yep.
it's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd like to move into our final segment where we talk about our final 3 questions that I like to ask every guest. So for you, what is your definition of success?
Success is being able to do what you want when you want. To me, that's simply it. I don't care how rich I am or whatever. I want to be able to do what I want when I want. And, clearly money helps you do all those things, being financially successful, but it's not always the end all be all. Yeah.
Okay, great, great. So, Trevor, for someone who is new to investing or even learning to focus on their goals and their path to success, can you give us a good book recommendation? I think you may have
Yeah. So I'm
teased
going to
this
give
already.
you 2. I'm going to cheat because I'm, that kind of guy. So
Okay.
Grant Cardone's 10X on Audible. And then listen to Be Obsessed or Be Average, also Grant Cardone on Audible. Because basically Be Obsessed or Be Average or Be Obsessed is the follow-up to 10X.
Sure.
And 10X is obviously massive effort, and the Be Obsessed is it just spoke to me. And I forced myself actually to listen to it at least 3 times a year, both of those books.
Great recommendations. I've listened to both multiple times
And
on
the
Audible.
author makes it come to life. Like, it just really does.
One of the really cool things about Grant Cardone with his Audible is that at the end of every chapter, he just riffs about the chapter. So I think by the end, the book may be 8 or 9 hours long. And by the end, you probably get another hour, hour and a half of extra content from him because he
And
just
if you
riffs.
can't answer his questions, you think, man, I better listen to it again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So before we get into the final question, first I want to thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I hope we continue this relationship and continue to network. How can we support you? How can people reach out to you, touch base, and provide support for
So
you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn and Facebook, K Trevor Thompson. It's always good if you send me a note, tell me where you connected with me, because I get a lot of friend requests, and I'm actually almost hitting the max now on Facebook, which I never thought I would. So I have to do some cleaning out. And then my website for my company is Niagara-investments.com, and Niagara because I'm from Niagara Falls, so that's the easy way to remember me. So those are the best. And my email is ktt@niagarainvestments.com with a dash.
Okay, great. And then the final question, if you could think back with me to a young Trevor, ages, 10 to 12 years old, sort of knowing what you've learned so far in your journey, what are 3 pieces of advice that you would give to yourself or really any preteen looking towards success?
Yeah, so I think the first thing for advice is I was always an A+ type personality trying to please others and kind of like put myself second. And there were several times that hurt my own development, right? And don't get me wrong, I believe in putting yourself out there and pleasing people. But it took me till I was almost like 50 or 60 to be able to say, wait a minute, I'm going to do this for me. And that's not selfish. And I always thought it was selfish. So definitely that. And then, I as a child, I was not a learner. I'm grade 12 educated and barely got out of grade 12. In fact, I found an excuse to go to work on my job. Said that I needed to earn money to go to college when I had no intention to go to college, and got like the last 2 weeks of school off because I was going to pass no matter what to go get a full-time job. So I think I would have taken learning a little more seriously, and just kind of knuckled down. And it was partly because the school system doesn't teach you what you really need. Once I started learning what I needed to live my life and be successful, learning became a whole different thing, right? I've not used algebra yet that I'm aware of, but I've certainly used a lot of the other things that I've done. And I think that the last thing is, take the time to appreciate people. When my kids were little, I was a workaholic and I didn't. And, when my parents started aging, I had my life and I was traveling and working and I didn't go home and hug them, and, now they're gone. And so take the time to, hug the ones around you and just go home and say, man, I got some good people around me. So I think that's my what I'm going to call the emotional message, right? Take the time to hug the people that are around you and just let them know you care.
I love it. 3 great pieces of advice. I really love that third one. I love how you touched on education. You touched on, taking care of yourself. And then you also touched on the people that you care about and the people that care about you. So this has really been a lot of fun for me. I really enjoyed it. I'm grateful that you came on here today. Did not know what road we were going to go. And I think we touched on a lot of fun things. I think we probably could do it again tomorrow and touch on
probably could, yeah.
a whole bunch of different things. So, but I look forward to touch base with you again in our networking and upcoming, and hopefully I'll see you in person soon. So
that would be awesome. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much. Trevor Thompson. Check him out. Have a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on the Healthy Investor Podcast. Check out the show notes for more information about connecting with our guest. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please head on over to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review. It would mean the world to me. I'm grateful for your support, and I wish you an abundance of success on your journey to healthy investments and a healthy life.